All right, thank you for staying. Now we'll take a look at our first discussion on the program. Flooding in Nigeria is usually caused by climate change, river overflowing, dam opening, poor urban planning practices, poor drainage systems that can't cope, and so on. Now, in the northern parts of the country, heavy rains are likely to cause rivers to overflow their banks and cause flooding in the neighboring states. We'll be taking a look at this on the program this morning. We have a former head of dam instrumentation, monitoring and maintenance of Kainji and Jaba dams. He's also a geologist, Mr. Babani Amadu, and also a public affairs analyst, Agoso Bamai, who joins us via Skype from Yola in Adamawa State to talk about this. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Agoso, if you can hear me, good morning.
Good morning. I hear you clearly.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so let me start with you. From what we have seen in the past few weeks in the aftermath of the flood, we've seen that thousands of farmlands have been submerged as a result of this flood. And there are projections that are saying that we are likely to experience food shortage in this part of the country, perhaps making worse already bad situation where we are now experiencing a food inflation of more than 23%. So from where you stand, where is this heading?
Like you said, we're heading towards a bad food situation, a situation of hunger. You know, when the year started, the Food and Agriculture Organization indicated that about 19.2 million Nigerians are at risk of hunger. And now that was before the floods. These floods came and displaced, affected over 171,000 people in Adamawa State alone. And it also destroyed over 89,000 hectares of farmlands. We're talking about farmlands here. So you have farmers who have lost their farms and also their households. A few of them have lost their farms, their entire crops, completely, with bringing back home absolutely nothing. But it's a little better for them. At least a few of them have their homes intact. And a lot of them also took loans to farm. To pay back those loans now, it's under question because they've lost everything. So certainly, you're looking at a situation of hunger as we go forward. The prices of foodstuff in the market are already high, and these people are subsistence farmers, a lot of them, and they don't have what to subsist on as it stands right now. And of course, the support, the relief they've received from the government is not enough to go far. For most people, it just lasted just a week. So yeah, you have a situation where the already bad situation is getting worse. Will gradually get worse and become worse as we move into the dry season.
All right. My question is to Mr. Amadu, who is right here with us in the studio. You know, he talked about the farmers, some of them took loans. As a matter of fact, the Daily Trust newspaper has a report that says that the farmers are in the dilemma over 11 trillion naira loan. Some of them from the anchor borrowers of the CBN and some of them from commercial banks. Now the question is, why have we not, used irrigation more? Because we farm basically once in a year, as it were, the wet season. And the wet season, you can't always control all the elements.
That's
but
correct.
In irrigation, it's different. So why haven't we looked into that more? Because, I mean, we always mouth it, the government talks about it, but in the area of implementation, we don't see more of that.
Yes, thank you for this question. If you look at a state like Kano, some many years ago, during the governorship of Rimi, came up with that program of irrigation. And people have taken great advantage of that system and have produced enough food, particularly when it comes to vegetables, tomatoes, and others. Now, essentially, when you have dams particularly are either meant for production of energy when it comes to light, and there are provisions for people to take advantage of that for irrigation. But the low knowledge of people engaging in irrigation has always been the problem around us. Only a few people in Kano have taken advantage of that. Of course, we would have avoided flooding if we take to irrigation farming. But don't forget as well, some waters are not perennial, meaning at a certain point the flood coming in from, we call it inflow. So the source of some of this inflow get dried up. And of course, if that dam was meant particularly for hydro production, at that time is also a threat, because little or no water, threat, little or no water are coming inflow, are now coming very slow. And therefore, the dams want to maximize the little water they have for the production of energy. So those are some of the issues you have. One, people are not too sure what they will get during the irrigation. Two, lack of knowledge. And three, not taking advantage of the waters they have. Now, on the dams itself, at a certain point, we don't want anybody tampering with the waters, because at that time, what we have stored in the dam for the production of energy have grossly been used.
Okay. All right. Now, for people to take advantage of this irrigation farming, certainly there has to be some kind of arrangement.
That's
right.
Correct. Yes.
A few days ago, the Minister of Agriculture dismissed the possibility of food shortage, banking on the fact that there's an arrangement that has been made for irrigation farming.
Yeah.
He was defending the Minister of Agriculture's budget before lawmakers at the National Assembly. And he feels that there is an arrangement that is being made for more people to go into irrigation, and that way we can avert the likelihood of a food shortage and all of that. From what you see, have we done enough in that regards to encourage more people? Right now, we are talking about probably 2.5 million hectares of farms for irrigation in the country. So are we doing enough in that regard?
I wouldn't say it totally no, but we've not done enough. Fortunately enough, I visited some of these mini dams we have all over, particularly in Zamfara, Bauchi, and some other ones that were actually meant for irrigation. If you go in there, you find things that were initially established. The vision they had, people are no longer keen into those visions. So when you go, you see line fallow. And when you ask, we visited because we wanted to expand our dams. So I look at the irrigation dams we had all over. They were really, really underutilized. People were not there as expected to come up with the fruit production we're talking about. And I feel like you ask that we need to do more, educate the people.
Talking about underutilization.
Yes.
Some persons have said that the federal government has done its part by creating some of this, building some of these dams, but that the state government, they're not fully on board, and that is why this is so.
I agree with you.
On that?
I agree with you. They are not fully on board. We have not really come to terms on food production. to my mind. We need to tell the people more. We need to educate the people the more, that we can take advantage of irrigation for crop production in a large scale. That has not been done really in a large scale, to my observation, and to the little visit I visited some of these places. I saw a lot of land, like I said, lying fallow. Except for Kano, that you see a lot of this vegetable production. People are coming from far and near, picking onion, picking tomatoes. But apart from it, some of these things I mentioned, I never saw things that way.
All right. Let's go back to Mr. Agoso, who is virtual. Now, let's talk about the Dasin Hausa Dam. That it's a project that has been lying fallow for decades. A lot of people have attributed the lack of building that dam, as the reason why we've seen the impact, the kind of effect that we've seen in recent times with regards to the flood. So what's your take? Have we seen enough response in terms of will to make sure that that project is done with?
The answer is no. Let me talk a little bit about Dasin Hausa Dam and the reason behind the conception of that dam. When Cameroon began the process of building a dam on the source of the River Benue in 1977, they had to do an environmental impact assessment study on the effect of the dam, of the dam on the environment, which they shared with Nigeria because we have riparian rights to the river. Most of River Benue is actually in Nigeria, but it rises in Cameroon. The source is in Cameroon. Because of the nature of the dam they were going to build, they knew it would cause problems downstream in Nigeria. So the suggestion was given, not a suggestion really, a study report indicated that we needed to build a buffer dam within Nigeria. The purpose of it will be to receive excess water from Lagdo Dam anytime there are releases, sudden releases that are supranatural, that are beyond the natural strength and volume of the waters, and then re-release it back into the Benue trough at the natural strength and volume of the Benue. And so that way things will continue normally downstream in the Benue, right into Nigeria, all the way to Kogi State, where the Benue meets River Niger. Anyway, that was not done. In 1980, agreement was reached, studies were done, everything was arranged, but that was not done. Up to today, we have not built that dam. The dam was conceived to also serve irrigation purposes that we were talking about earlier, and also supply electricity. So it will be a hydroelectricity dam. It will also help farmers, and the people around there and downstream, all throughout them are farmers. They farm a lot. That would have helped with the irrigation we're talking about. But we've not done that. And so anytime Lagdo Dam had to release water, because they have to, otherwise we might end up having the dam collapsing. And that will be worse for us in Nigeria here. So when they have a lot of water during rainy season, usually they have to release some of that water. Right. Unfortunately, we are not ready to receive it, and then it becomes a problem for us here. And then let me add quickly that the Benue has filled up with sand through the process of siltation. So you have two problems: nothing to control the water, and then the Benue is filled up with sand. The water just flows literally into communities straight.
Okay. All right. Mr. Amado, he's just mentioned the fact that dams were supposed to be built, yes, and they were not built. Yes. In your view, you are somebody who's headed dam construction and all of that. Why didn't we build these dams, and why is it so difficult to build these dams?
Yes, the cost of building them is enormous in the first place. I was in a place in Nepal.
But when you put it side by side with the cost of the flood, yes, and the impact to do.
Yes. When you build a dam first, it also serves as flood control. because you store water and you release the water at will. That's why we have what we call the spillways. Once you fill in water at your reservoir, now you use it for electricity production, like he said. But when you have water coming upstream, it is equally stored. And you can also use that system for flood control. Yes, the plan NEPA had initially that every 5 years we must build a dam. I was in a place called Power Planning, Engineering and Rehabilitation. That was the sector I was. And the idea was every 5 years we should have a dam. One, to meet up with the demands of electricity. Two, to be able to contend with flood. Now, it takes about 5 to 6 years to build a dam, a hydro dam. So the cost implication is high, that's one. Two, but I'm not doing that to defend government. Ideally, if previous government, that every government that comes in build in a dam before they leave, most of these flooding issues we're having now would have been minimized.
Okay, what are the processes involved and why will it take up to 5 to 6 years to build a dam? Take us through.
Yes. First, the geologists do their mapping. They choose the site for the dam. The engineering group also come do the design for the dams. You bring in the hydrologists who will say this dam will have a continual flow in of water. Otherwise, what is a dam? It's an artificial barrier across water. So you must have water, that's the key thing. You must have a source of water running throughout the year. But if you just build a dam and there's no source of water, of course you just build in a structure. So you must have water coming in and you must be sure that that water will keep coming. The volume might change, but then you have water coming in throughout the year for you to serve the purpose at which the dam is built. Now, if those studies are done and you feel satisfied, then you go into construction. So that's why it takes that number of years to come up with a dam. There were a lot of dams, you have had visibility studies on some of these dams, yet unbuilt.
Okay, in this case, we are talking about the Singhausa Dam. It has taken more than 40 years.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you have more than enough time.
That's correct.
To do this.
Yes.
I mean, except if you do,
yes.
you are not intending
That's
to do
correct.
it.
That's
but if
correct.
you intend to do it, 40 years, it's enough. It's an entire lifetime
Yes.
of some people.
Yes.
Right? So yet we've seen that it is not done. And looking at the relevance of that dam and how significant it is, tell us how important is that particular dam that we are talking about.
Maybe before I go to that dam, in 1992, I was employed in NEPA. And the purpose of employing us as a group of young engineers and geologists was to build in about 3 dams. Mambila, the studies was almost completed, and we were brought in to build that dam. You had Zungeru, it was over ready for build. Somehow the government delayed. That's the obvious. I remember when we came in, the government then had brought in expatriates for the construction of that dam. Loans were already taken, preparation were already made, but somehow the then president or head of state stepped aside. And when he did, previous government did not take it until maybe a certain government came in again and said, let's go back to this. Now, the truth is, I think government had to have this kind of, will I call it, I don't really know how to put it. Once a thing is decided, we must bring it to completion. If we keep procrastinating, we keep delaying, time will come that there are things we might not be able to manage. Don't forget when you started by saying climate change. Every day the climate is changing because of various reasons. And every day we have threats due to flood.
And so this underscores the need for us to even expedite this more further.
We need.
So let me just go back to Agoso, who is there standing by. Now, following the impact that we've seen of the flood, what can you tell us about the responses that we have seen with regards to, making sure that we get farmers to perhaps consider this irrigation, or maybe to kind of compensate them for the losses that they have incurred from where you are?
Well, so far, relief material has come in from different quarters, including government quarters. There are organizations, international organizations, some private organizations in Nigeria here, and individuals and politicians running for office, looking to cash in on the sufferings of people to do some campaign. But they also brought in some help. But like I said, it's not enough. We should look beyond that. One of the things I think the government should consider is how to help these farmers offset their loans. A lot of them took loans, and there is no way they can pay back now. So the government can help them with that, and of course also give them inputs for dry season farming. Fortunately, dry season farming has picked up a lot here in Adamawa, and there's a lot more that can be done, but people do a lot of dry season farming. So it's one way the government can come in and give them inputs so they can go back to the lands, since the waters have receded now, and do the dry season farming and have something to take care of their family for the rest of the year. So the government should look into offsetting the loans that they already have received, help them with inputs, and they will do the rest. The people are ready and willing to do the rest. Otherwise, it's going to get more difficult for those farmers. And the truth is, they really cannot pay back those loans, given the current situation.
All right, Mr. Agoso, as a follow-up to his question, about 2 days ago, the Minister of Agriculture said that the federal government has restocked the strategic reserve with about 200,000 metric tons of commodities, various commodities. To what extent do you think that will help with the food inflation in the country?
Well, those reserves, we do have a silo, a federal government silo here in Adamawa. But usually these things are not given out free. The people have to buy them. Even though it's subsidized, but they still have to buy those things. It comes back to the same situation. Where would they find the money? And the commitment of government to help out with irrigation and dry season farming is good. I have to say it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But for most things in Nigeria, accessing that kind of support it's again a problem. You have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody up there. Otherwise, you're not getting it. So it's likely that all this support that the government is talking about will end up with people in government and politicians and their families and relations, not the people who actually need those things. So if there's a way this support will get to the people directly themselves, then good and fine. Again, I have to repeat, we need to help these farmers to offset the loans that they took to go into wet season farming.
All right. Okay, Mr. Amadou.
Yes.
How would you describe the collaborative effort between the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Water, which is, the host of the dams,
yes,
and even maybe the Ministry of Science and Technology,
that's correct,
so that they can harness their expertise to ensure that this irrigation process works?
I tell you the truth, I lie not. I just came from Kainji. Upstream of Kainji, you hardly find irrigation. The waters are there, and you tend to see no one showing interest. Don't forget that, like he said, some of this farm produce we get come from the core north. Now, people not taking advantage of the waters we have upstream of the dam is quite unfortunate, because all the conditions for production of food are all there. Now, these three agencies you have just mentioned, one, we need to educate the people, like he said. We need to encourage the people. The science and technology, the Ministry of Water Resources, the other ministry you're talking about.
Agriculture.
Agriculture. More on the agriculture. Let them educate the people and said, these waters are here for you. Take advantage of that. We have no reason in Kainji, for instance, to lack tomatoes, watermelon, some other things that irrigation could bring. I'm not talking of other major farm produce, but even the little ones that we could get upstream are hardly found. So, to my mind, people are not yet educated. I mean, we've not educated the people enough. We've not probably encouraged the people enough. If that is done, believe you me, I assure you, we will lack food in Nigeria.
Do you think that there's probably a problem of accessing the lands to actually farm around those places?
No, the land are accessible, quite accessible. Like I said, I do dam monitoring. I go upstream and I access the land myself. I either comes with the vehicles, or we go with, we call it land cruising. I mean, surface cruising. We go in there, look at some of these things, monitor them, come back. Yet you will see farmers, all that they're interested in, of course, is the fish that is in the water. But to use the water to come up, I mean, produce food, that is hardly seen. People are only interested in the fishes and not what comes.
But aside this education and enlightenment, is there some form of support that the state governments can give to this farmer?
That's correct. Just like I said, accessibility to loans, the state government, probably in collaboration with other agencies, can help these people, encourage them by giving them loans. I said, go back to the education, educate them more. They say you don't need to go to that far to get this. You can get it here by doing this, by farming this, by doing this. So we need to educate the people more and support them by loans. Loans could be not just money, the seeds.
But I think that is already ongoing with the Anchor Borers program. And again, it goes back to the issue of the losses that were incurred as a result of the flood. So you have a program that is running, Anchor Borers program for the farmers. They have been able to access, say, assuming some of them have been able to access the loans through the Anchor Borers program. And now the flood came and destroyed everything. So are we saying take the loans again?
So let me also
Should there be loans anymore? Or
yes,
grants?
Let me also correct something. People in our own area, we did flood mapping. In flood mapping, you're saying, don't farm beyond this point. Don't build beyond this point. Because water could come in, flood could come in. So to be on the safer side, don't exceed this level. And we put in flood map beacons, big enough for you to see. We can avoid some of these effect we're having due to flood if we adhere strictly to these guidelines. People allowed, I don't want to say that, but I felt there are many ways we could avoid flood destroying our crops, destroying our farmlands, destroying our homes, if the beacons we put to tell people this is part of the floodplain, don't come into it. Studies have shown that over time, there are years when you have wet years, we call them wet years, where you have heavy rainfall, you have surface runoff coming. Of course, water will get to this level. That studies has been done. And people are encouraged not to farm beyond those points. If people will adhere strictly, we will avoid our farmland being washed away and our crops. But having said that, people, I want to reiterate this. If we really do have a focus that we want to have food sufficiency in Nigeria, believe you me, we will really do have. If people are really, really, we love what we call take ownership. Whatever you're doing, take ownership of it. If people will take ownership of what they want to produce, if government will want to take ownership of, let's make our people productive when it comes to food, believe you me, by putting all the things that these people need, we will go out of food scarcity.
Mr. Amadou, as you're talking, I was just thinking about something.
Yes.
Saying that climate is changing, you don't know the next thing that will happen.
Yes.
Is it not about time, maybe the focus on even wet season farming should shift to irrigation farming? Because in irrigation, you can actually control the elements.
Yeah.
You know how much water goes in, you know when you put your fertilizer, it cannot get washed away and all of that. So isn't it time, maybe the emphasis on farming in wet season, it should shift to irrigation?
It's not just people who are close to the waters that benefit from the wet season. Even people far off from the waters. So the wet season is an important time for people to really do their farming. But we're saying let people do their farming in the wet season with a little caution. That this is what you can avoid, but you can maximize your production. If you will avoid those things, do your thing on the right place. Now, studies, like I said, have shown that over time, this is the behavior of waters. I am a member of the climate change. And every day there are agencies that give warning, advice to farmers, to operators of dams. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So it's part of the education I was talking about, the awareness I was talking about. If that is done properly, people will not want to make mistakes because nobody wants to put in a crop or put in anything that will be washed away by flooding.
All right.
So we can do that better.
All right. So let's bring in Agoso Bameyi from Adamawa. Now let's talk about these farmers. These are people that are some kind of devastated, having some kind of traumatic experience right now, and for them to go back to the farms, you need to resettle them in some way. Many of them, they've lost their homes, right? They are homeless. So what can we do with respect to that? Because, I mean, if you are still homeless, how do you go back to the farm?
All right. Before I answer that, let me go back a little bit to what the engineer said earlier about beacons and warning signs and all that. It's true what he described. That is in a normal, natural situation. But what is happening in Adamawa, affecting Taraba, Benue, all the way to Kogi State, and then going into the Delta, affecting other states, even in the East, it's really not natural. And when I say it's not natural, I mean that for the two reasons we mentioned earlier, lack of control of the excess waters from Lagdo Dam, because of that and Hausa Dam is not there. And then, of course, the fact that siltation has filled up the River Benue with sand. And so it does not have the natural depth. I grew up beside River Benue. I remember when we were kids, how we used to go there and swim. You could jump from the surface, from the banks of River Benue, and somersault 3-4 times before you reach the water. Right now, you walk from the bank straight into the riverbed. There's no more depth. So the flooding that is resulting from this is not natural. Because these communities have lived with the river prosperously and peacefully for a very long time. They know the places where they shouldn't farm because naturally the river will reach there. And so you could control that. But this one, there's really no control. The waters come in and just take all over. These are places the people have been farming on previously naturally. So the warning as it stands does not really apply. Without the remediation, we have to dredge the River Benue and then put the Dasan Hausa Dam as a control, and then do other remediations. Then we can return to these normal warning signs, which will work then. As it stands right now, it's really not applicable given the situation here. Now back to the farmers. Some of them lost their houses as well as their farms. Some of them lost relations, children, wife, or the husband. Some of them have their houses, but they've lost their farms entirely. Remember, some of them lost their animals also. Pigs, goats, sheep, etc., washed away by the river. So it's total devastation as far as these people are concerned. They need to be picked up. They cannot pick themselves up as it stands right now. And that's why we've been saying the government has to come in and find a way of helping them offset those loans and then giving them implements and inputs, even if it's given to them as a loan. Or the government can help discuss with the agencies where they got those loans, and so that the loans can be extended, and the government can come in as a guarantor for those loans to really help these people. They need help. They really cannot get up on their own. If they attempt it on their own, it's going to take several years, and that means a perpetuation of poverty. But with help from the government, they can pick up and move on before the end of the dry season. And by the time the next rainy season comes in, they would be ready to continue with their lives. Mr.
Agoso, what role do you think the private sector can play in all of this?
Well, that's another thing we're looking at. Like I said earlier, a lot of the relief that came from the private sector, NGOs, INGOs, etc. But we are suggesting that INGOs that really want to help the people can come in with support where the people are brought together and they farm in cooperatives, and the INGOs supply them with the inputs that are needed, allowing them to go back to the farms with support internationally. Locally, organizations can also organize themselves and help these people so that the loans are not given, or the support are not given to individuals, in which case it might be misused, but an entire community can be brought together. They organize themselves very well, and then they are supported to go back to their farms even if they are not shouldered entirely, even if it's just part of what they need. These people are hardworking, they are committed, they also respect themselves. They would not want to be dependent. They would work hard to make sure they bounce back. Banks and other organizations can also come up with a sort of a fund where this kind of support is given to the people. Communities that organize themselves can then be supported to go back to their farms and during this dry season. That can be done. And like I said, a few organizations are doing it, but a lot more needs to be done so that we don't wait on the government. Government processes are very long, very tedious. Again, issues of corruption come in, like I said earlier. This kind of support that comes from government ends up in the hands of people that really don't need it. And those who need it are not getting it. But if it comes from the private organizations, it will get into the hands of people who really need it.
All right, thank you so much. I think it's a good place for us to end the discussion this morning on Daybreak. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspectives with us. Thank you. Agoso Bamai is a public affairs analyst. He joins us via Skype from Adamawa State. And also here in the studio is a former head of dam instrumentation, monitoring and maintenance of Kainji and Jeba Dams, also a geologist. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. And that's our show for today. In case you have missed all that we have discussed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms. And also, don't forget, you can watch us live on YouTube. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
Thank you for welcoming us into your homes this morning. My name is Stella Iaji. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. For now, do have a very pleasant day.